Saudi Arabian oil refineries have been attacked by Iran. Will the U.S. be striking Iran? The New York Times has released a hit piece on Kavanaugh that now they admit was false. There were 2,200 aborted babies found in the home of an abortionist in Indiana, right under Pete Buttigieg's nose. And there is something just plain obscene going on in New York City. They're about to let 1.1 million children go on strike. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance. We have so much to talk about with you on tonight's program. I hope that you can stay with me for the whole show because you're going to get insights here that you'll be hard-pressed to find in other places. All right, let's start with the attacks on the Saudi oil refineries. By the way, thank you to everyone who prayed for us for our Houston trip. We went to Houston. We were outside the Democrat debates. We had so many media people interview us, take pictures of us, film of us, write about us. It was a good moment to stand and to be counted. One of the pictures of my son and the tag about the Terry Train band, one of the pictures ran literally in hundreds of newspapers in America and around the world. So our goal is to stand for the truth, get the word out there, stand up for babies, stand against socialism, stand for the Constitution. And that's what we were all about in Houston. So for all of you who prayed for us, I thank you. And for the handful of you that helped us financially, I thank you as well. All right. The Saudis, according to some reports, up to half of their oil refineries have been damaged. That means that their output, unless they crank up some of the remaining ones that are still functioning, their output is going to drop seriously. This has caused an immediate spike in oil prices. Yesterday saw the largest jump in the price of crude oil per barrel, the largest percentage jump in the history of the recording of crude oil. Today it went down a little bit, but you're going to see an immediate jump in prices at the gas tank. It could be 25 cents, it could be 50 cents. In my opinion, it's bogus because we have enough oil in our country to take care of ourselves. We are the largest producer of energy in the world, and we now are a net energy producer. So it's a whole nother story to talk about the greed and avarice of some of the fine people at ExxonMobil or some of the other oil companies in America. But nevertheless, we will see an increase in our prices at the pump. The more important question is, who did it and what will the repercussions be? The Iranians deny any responsibility. Today, the United States government said that the satellite images that we have, the film that we have, shows that the missile strikes were launched from inside of Iran. Now, Iran is formerly Persia, but more importantly, Iran is Shiite Muslim. Saudi Arabia is Sunni Muslim. Iran is the foundation, historically and geographically, of Shiite Islam, which believes that a blood relative of Muhammad must be the heir to the caliphate. He must, like we have a presidency or the Catholic Church has a papacy, they have a caliphate. Caliph, literally in Arabic, means successor. So Shiites believe that it has to be a blood relative. Sunni Muslims, which is 99.9% of Saudi Arabia, not quite that high, but almost. Sunni Muslims believe that it could be anybody. Anybody could be a caliph. So the bloodshed has gone on for nearly 1,400 years between Shiites and Sunnis. And it's going to continue until the end of time, is my prediction, unless the back of Islam itself is broken. Iran is denying responsibility, but we have the proof. So the question now is, who is going to retaliate, if anyone? There are Democrats, interestingly, inside of Congress who are saying that the United States should strike militarily at the sites from which the missiles were launched. No one is saying that we should strike at Iran's oil refineries, because that would not just disrupt Iran, that would disrupt a huge portion of Europe and in some ways could have a major impact on the whole world. So, does President Trump want to use his power as commander-in-chief to what? To punish an adversary of Saudi Arabia. Perhaps a more intelligent response would be, Saudis have all kinds of high-end jets, U.S.-made military jets, and an incredible missile system, incredible missiles that they can use. They don't need us. Why don't they, if they believe that these attacks came from Iran, then why don't they just attack themselves? In my opinion, that would be a better course. I'm not opposed to the president and the U.S. military taking action. But somebody should be held responsible, and there should be some type of in-kind response. Because if not, it will embolden Iran. Now, here's the one wild card in all of this. Iran knows that we can see what they're doing. They know we have satellites. They know that we can trace where the missiles came from. So what if they were, in fact, trying to provoke us so that they could justify stepping up the speed of their nuclear program, so that they could justify attacking Israel with a nuclear weapon? See, this is the way they think. They believe that the end of time will be marked by an all-out war against the Jews because of what Muhammad said. Muhammad said the end will not come until a Jew hides behind a rock or a tree, and the rock or the tree says, "O Abdullah, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." And he spoke about this massive conflagration of the Muslims against the Jews. So what if some of these lunatics that are in charge of Iran are trying to precipitate this type of crisis? What if they just want to have an all-out war where many of their people become martyrs? In other words, some of them really believe that if they die in the cause of Allah, fighting their enemies, which would include Westerners, Christians, Jews, or who they consider reprobates, the Saudis, if they think, man, we could kill a whole bunch of the enemies of Allah and go to heaven and get a bunch of virgins and have perpetual streams, this is a great deal. Let's take it. That's the one question we need to ask ourselves. And most military analysts and political analysts in the West are completely incapable of even discussing it because they don't understand the Islamic mind. But I do. And I guarantee you that there are some elements inside of Iran that are wanting a U.S. strike in response, because it's like a game of chess to them, and then it gives them the next move. Please don't go away. The New York Times has not once again breached journalistic ethics. The New York Times has just once again showed that they're not journalists. Don't go away. Introducing Roxy Guitar. If you're a guitar or bass player, whether you play acoustic or electric, check out Roxy Guitar. I've been playing for over 40 years and seen guitar stores all over America. I've never seen a store like Roxy Guitar. Roxy Guitar has over 700 guitars in stock, over 1,500 pedals, over 200 amps. For the beginner or price-conscious buyer, there's Michael Kelly guitars. For the serious player or professional, Roxy Guitar has the finest selection of guitar lines I've ever seen. You know I love Warrior guitars. Roxy Guitar has over 100 Warriors in stock. They have Heritage, G&L, Gretsch, John Sears, BC Rich, Duesenberg, Dean, legendary guitars at great prices, including pre-owned Gibsons, Fenders, and more. Let them know you heard about Roxy Guitar from Randall Terry and receive 10% or more off your purchase on select items. Go to roxyguitar.com. You might have heard the name Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court Justice, in the news again. It's because over the weekend, in the editorial section, the New York Times ran a story in which the author said that there's a new allegation against Brett Kavanaugh. Now, because this is a Christian show on Christian network being seen on Christian television stations, I cannot read, nor will I, the exact quotes from the various stories that are circulating around. But these, if you want to get small children out of the room, in effect, they are saying that Brett Kavanaugh at some party when he was in college exposed himself to some woman. What the Times did not do, here's where the big hubbub is that the Times did not say that the woman in question says, I don't have any recollection of this. Now, she is allegedly the victim, but she says, I don't know what you're talking about. The story should never have run. However, once the story hit, the Democrat candidates, one by one, started running their mouths saying, if we get the presidency, we will ask Congress to begin impeachment proceedings against Brett Kavanaugh. So now they're talking about impeaching President Trump, and you might have noticed in the news that the first hearings are starting to stumble along in their way against to impeach President Trump, which is ludicrous. But now they're talking about, give us the White House and we'll impeach Kavanaugh. A story that doesn't have a witness, doesn't have a victim, doesn't have an accusation of someone saying, this happened to me. Nothing ran. Democrat candidates pounced on it. Other media outlets started running their mouth over the weekend. Will Brett Kavanaugh survive? Will Brett Kavanaugh be impeached? Impeachment proceedings being discussed against Brett Kavanaugh. All based upon a lie. A story without a victim. A story without the person who's allegedly the victim saying, oh yeah, I remember this is what happened. I have no recollection of this. This is disgusting. Now, there's a lot of people trying to analyze, well, how did the Times let this happen? Why didn't some editor catch this? They didn't want to catch it. The man who wrote the story was an attorney for Bill Clinton when Bill Clinton was being impeached over lying about Monica Lewinsky, the young woman, forgive me, her name will come to me. But Brett Kavanaugh was an attorney for Ken Starr. So the attorney who wrote the piece for the Times and Brett Kavanaugh were literally sitting across from each other during the Clinton scandals. This was payback. And the author of the story knew that there was no testifying victim. He knew what it would do to Kavanaugh. He knew that under no standards of journalism could this be run. He wanted it run. He knew he was lying, and he did it. And the goal was never to tell the truth. That's the part about this that you and I have got to start to grasp. The New York Times, the godless media on the left, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, the Washington Post, the truth is not their objective. Their objective is to derail Christian ethics, Donald Trump, conservative Republicans, and to get control of all branches of government so that they can march headlong with their godless agenda. So I believe it was Harry Reid who lied about Mitt Romney, saying he hasn't paid his taxes in 10 years. Remember that? Do you remember that back in that election? It was a lie. Harry Reid knew it was a lie. And when he was asked later about how did he feel about the fact that he had lied, his response to one of the journalists was, well, we won, didn't we? In other words, I don't give a darn if I lied. My goal was to destroy Mitt Romney, and I succeeded. The New York Times doesn't care if they are lying about Brett Kavanaugh. The mission is to stir up opposition to President Trump. That's the mission. The mission was a success. It wasn't a failure on the part of the Times. It was a success. Because even after the retraction, the New York Times had to correct it. The New York Times has egg on its face in a kind of a pseudo-journalistic sense. But even after that, they have people saying, Oh man, we've got to impeach Kavanaugh. They're just running headlong with it. They don't care about the facts any more than they care about the fact that President Trump didn't collude with the Russians. Are you hearing me? We've got to stop looking at mainstream, godless media as if they were in the pursuit of truth, because they're not. They're in the pursuit of an agenda, and that it is an agenda that is born in hell. Don't go away. We've got something in New York City to share with you. Speaking about born in hell.
I also want to speak tonight directly to Muslims throughout the world. We respect your faith. Its teachings are good and peaceful. And those who commit evil in the name of Allah blaspheme the name of Allah.
We have reaffirmed again and again that the United States is not and never will be at war with Islam. Islam teaches peace.
Islam is a religion of peace. They are not Muslims, they are monsters.
We've been told that Muslim terrorists have hijacked the peaceful religion of Islam. But Islamic art and literature tell a very different story. To know the truth, we only have to study the narrative of the founder of Islam, Muhammad, in his own words. Welcome back. New York City schools have just announced that they are going to allow 1.1 million children skip school this Friday to participate in climate change protests. So the United Nations is going to be holding 3 days of conferences about global warming and climate change and the existential threat and blah, blah, blah. Same stuff we heard in the 70s, all of which was false back then, and it's false now. But I digress. The New York City school system is going to allow 1.1 million children to skip school if they want, so they can march in the streets. This is so obscene. You know, think about it. And in some ways, it's a great precedent. I mean, maybe one day they'll allow the children to skip school to protest Islam and its treatment of women, or Islam and its existential threat to Israel, which is a clear and stated fact. If we're going to talk about existential threats, maybe, I mean, this is really far-fetched, maybe one day they'll let the kids skip school to have a day of mourning for the 65 million children that are dead by abortion. Maybe they'll let them march for the 1/3 of the students that aren't there in New York because they're dead. Those classrooms would have more children. There'd be more friends. There'd be more people on sports teams and in spelling bees. Maybe they'll let the kids march in grief or mourning or protest against that. It's unlikely. But this is about a photo op. So what's going to happen is the major networks, the New York Times, they are going to have footage of thousands and thousands of kids in New York holding signs. Now these kids, they don't understand climate change. They're just being moved around like pawns or like images in a photograph. All right, this is a photo op. And it's a brilliant move on behalf of, on the part of the left. And it's a hardcore political move on behalf of the New York City school system and Mayor de Blasio. But what's funny is that, it's actually tragic. God forgive me for saying it was funny. Only 42% of kids in New York City schools test at their grade level. 58% of the children there are not where they're supposed to be academically. Now, in other words, you could say, hey, this whole climate change thing, there's really not any empirical data that can back this up. There's really not. But we have significant empirical data that shows that we kids are getting a crappy education. You're teaching us how to use condoms. You're teaching us that we can sneak around our parents' back and get birth control, or kill our babies without our mom and dad knowing about it. But we can't read the labels on the birth control. We can't read a map when we graduate. We'll protest against climate change, but we can't read the Declaration of Independence. So maybe they should be allowed to protest against the cruddy, nasty, pathetic, socially correct, politically correct education that they're getting. Now, the truth be known, missing this one day is probably not going to hurt them scholastically because they're already in such dire straits. And many of them are going to remember this. The problem is that it's going to sear in their consciences that as kids, once upon a time, they stood bravely against climate change. Maybe they should all take a week-long vacation, just drive out to the Midwest. Just drive on Interstate 90, Interstate 80, Interstate 70, and smell the clean air and recognize that New York City is its own problem. It's not about climate change. It's just about 8 million people being boxed in like a bunch of experiments. I've got to take a quick break. Please don't go away. What Would Mohammed Do? Islamic Terrorism Explained is the best movie series documentary ever produced on the life of Muhammad and Islam. How do I know? Because it's what critics are saying. John Moore, radio host and author, said, "I learned more from What Would Mohammed Do about Islam and Islamic terrorism than I've learned from everything I ever read and watched in my entire life." Best-selling author Dr. Bill Warner said, "What Would Mohammed Do is the best movie series, TV production on the life of Muhammad and Islamic terrorism that has ever been produced." Friends, this is what the experts are saying. No one has ever done what we've done. I encourage you to get 1, 2, 4 copies. Call 304-289-3700. That's 304-289-3700, or order it at the address or the website that you see on the screen. Introducing Roxy Guitar. If you're a guitar or bass player, whether you play acoustic or electric, check out Roxy Guitar. I've been playing for over 40 years and seen guitar stores all over America. I've never seen a store like Roxy Guitar. Roxy Guitar has over 700 guitars in stock, over 1,500 pedals, over 200 amps. For the beginner or price-conscious buyer, there's Michael Kelly guitars. For the serious player or professional, Roxy Guitar has the finest selection of guitar lines I've ever seen. You know I love Warrior guitars. Roxy Guitar has over 100 Warriors in stock. They have Heritage, G&L, Gretsch, John Sears, BC Rich, Duesenberg, Dean, legendary guitars at great prices, including pre-owned Gibsons, Fenders, and more. Let them know you heard about Roxy Guitar from Randall Terry and receive 10% or more off your purchase on select items. Go to roxyguitar.com. Abortionist George Klopfer, a man who has murdered tens of thousands of babies, he went to his eternal reward on September the 3rd. He died. In 2016, he was finally stripped of his license because of putting women in danger and not abiding by Indiana law, even when it comes to killing children. I have personally protested against this man, right? This is he was an evil man, and his fate is now in the hands of the Almighty. Over 2,200 dead babies were found in his home. So his family is going through the home because he's dead. And they find over 2,000 aborted babies in formaldehyde. Why? The thing that I want you to take away from this, friends, is there's a reason why in the scriptures the sin of shedding innocent blood is the sin that cries to God the loudest, cries above all other sins. And it's why I have a duty as a Christian leader to keep circling back to this, because God Almighty in His holy word keeps circling back to this. We are not fools. We are not impatient. We are not being redundant. We are not those who are trying to strip the rights of anybody. We are those who are speaking for God and for His innocent unborn. Why did this man have all these babies? It's the spirit of death. Maybe he was selling their bodies on the black market. Maybe he just didn't want to pay for them to be disposed. Maybe he was giving them to people involved in demonic rituals. We'll see what the authorities find. How hard they want to look. Because I guarantee you there are some receipts around there somewhere. But this is what child killing is. Child killing. Don't call it abortion, call it what it is. And this all happened under the nose of Pete Buttigieg. And do you think that the media is going to go after that, like they've gone after Kavanaugh with a false story? No. Why? Because they're godless. We just have to do the math and then we can see the truth. God bless you.